The smell of burning flesh fills the air. A crowd gathers in silence as another Protestant heretic is tied to the stake. The year is 1555 and England is burning. But this isn't the work of a mad tyrant. The woman ordering these deaths was once called the rightful Queen of England, a devout Catholic who believed she was saving souls from eternal damnation. Her name was Mary Tudor. History remembers her as Bloody Mary. But how did the daughter of Henry VIII become England's most feared religious persecutor? And were her actions the desperate gambit of a traumatized woman, or something far more calculated? Our story begins not with blood, but with betrayal. Mary Tudor was born in 1516 to Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. For the first 17 years of her life, she was the cherished heir to the English throne. But everything changed when Henry's obsession with a male heir tore her world apart. When Mary was 17, her father declared his marriage to her mother invalid, not for love, but for politics, and the promise of a son with Anne Boleyn. In a single stroke, Mary went from princess to bastard. Henry forced her to sign a document declaring herself illegitimate and her mother's marriage a lie. Imagine the psychological impact. Your entire identity, your birthright, your family's honor, erased by the stroke of a pen. As Henry broke from Rome and established the Church of England, Mary watched her Catholic faith be systematically dismantled. Then came Edward VI, her younger half-brother, who pushed England even further toward Protestantism. For 6 years, Mary lived as an outsider in her own country, clinging to the old faith while watching everything she held sacred be destroyed. When Edward VI died in 1553 at just 15, England faced a succession crisis that would change everything. The Protestant establishment, terrified of a Catholic queen, attempted to place Lady Jane Grey on the throne. But Mary had spent years building alliances. When she raised her banner, the English people, tired of religious upheaval and respecting her legitimate claim, flocked to her cause. After just 9 days, Jane Grey was deposed and then executed. Mary Tudor entered London in triumph on August 3, 1553. The crowd cheered as church bells rang throughout the city. Finally, England had its rightful queen. But Mary's victory came with a terrible burden. She believed God had delivered England into her hands for one purpose: to restore the Catholic faith and save her people's souls from Protestant heresy, and she was willing to pay any price to achieve it. Initially, Mary showed restraint. She pardoned many of her enemies and promised religious tolerance. But as Protestant resistance grew and plots against her life emerged, her patience evaporated. In November 1554, Parliament restored the heresy laws. The persecution could begin legally. February 4th, 1555. Smithfield Market, London. John Rogers, a Protestant clergyman, becomes the first victim of Mary's campaign. As flames consumed him, he showed no signs of fear, reportedly washing his hands in the fire as if it were cold water. The crowd's reaction was unexpected. Instead of cheering for Catholic restoration, many watched in horrified silence. Some even showed sympathy for the condemned man. But Mary pressed on. Over the next 3 years, approximately 280 Protestants would burn for their faith. These weren't just nameless heretics. They included bishops, scholars, and common people whose only crime was refusing to abandon their beliefs. Burnings at the stake were slow, agonizing deaths. Victims were tied to wooden posts. The flames often began at the feet, crawling upward, charring flesh while the condemned screamed or prayed. Eyewitnesses described it as unbearable. But what of Mary herself? History often forgets that behind these executions was a woman carrying her own profound suffering. 2 phantom pregnancies left her devastated and convinced that God was punishing England for its heresy. Mary died on November 17, 1558, aged 42, reportedly calling out, "Christ, Christ," in her final moments. She had reigned for just 5 years, but her legacy was written in smoke and ash. Her half-sister Elizabeth immediately restored Protestantism, and Protestant martyrologists like John Fox ensured that Mary's victims were remembered as heroes in his Book of Martyrs. The nickname Bloody Mary stuck, but modern historians paint a more complex picture. Mary executed fewer people than her father Henry VIII, and religious persecution was common across 16th century Europe. Perhaps Mary Tudor's greatest tragedy wasn't the blood she spilled, but the futility of it all. She died believing she had failed God, while her victims became the foundation of English Protestant identity. The question remains, was Mary a monster or simply a woman whose deepest convictions led her down a path of irreversible tragedy? History, as always, leaves us to decide.